So early 2014, Council prepared its draft annual plan. This was distributed for public consultation in April. Written submissions were received and opportunities given for individuals and organisations to appear before councillors to express views on the annual plan. And the result of these processes is set out in the following appendices. A, an analysis of the written and verbal submissions made in response, and this is followed by the Mayor's recommendations. B, a summary of the financial changes to the draft annual plan based on adoption of the Mayor's recommendations. C, a schedule containing the rates information that is required to give effect to the 14-15 annual plan. D, minor changes and errors. And E, a summary of submissions and staff responses. If I could now get you to turn to Appendix A, please, on page 9. Actually, let's go to page 10. You can see here the submissions broken down by the number of submissions on each issue. The top 10 or biggest issues that were submitted on include the tram, recreation and sports services, Christchurch transport plan, the road network, cycleway funding, community grants, waterways and land drainage, active transport, asset sales, and fees and charges. I won't read through the whole list. They were the top 10 of 19 or above submitted by topic. Total number of issues submitted on at the bottom of page 11 you can see was 800 from all of the submitters. If we now move on to page 12 and the summary of the Mayor's recommendations. So with respect to the annual plan 2014-15 flooding remissions, it is recommended that Council approve a further 0.11% increase in rates to cover the cost of flooding remissions. Estimated cost is approximately $360,000. Templeton Pool. It is recommended that Council extend the opening times of the Templeton Pool by 1 week at an operating cost of $1,000. Tram. It is recommended that the Council include an extra $1.69 million in the capital program for 14-15 to enable extensions to the tram route as per option 1A. And just for those who aren't aware what option 1A is, Oxford Terrace, Cashel Mall, High Street, Manchester Street, Cathedral Square Loop. Further recommendation is that further investigation and consultation occur with regard to implementation and timing of changes to parts of the route, stages 1B and 2, as part of the long-term plan 2015 process. 1B being Litchfield Street, Poplar Lane, Tuam Street, High Street Loop, and stage 2 being the return loop to CPIT. Head-to-head walkway. It is recommended that Council bring forward $142,000 from 15-16 to the annual plan year of 14-15 to enable completion of the first 2 sections, Pony Point to Naval Point and Allendale to Governor's Bay, as well as funding planning and design of the next section. Perimeter walkway. It is recommended that Council substitute $50,000 in 2014-15 and 15-16 from the Banks Peninsula Walkway Development Program to accelerate the perimeter walkway. On cycleways, it is recommended that Council resolve that the cycleway program be rephased for completion within 5 years with no increase in annual plan budget. This will also need to be reflected in the long-term plan 2015. Akaroa Museum. It is recommended that Council allow entry to the Akaroa Museum free of charge with the addition of a donation box. This will incur an impact on revenue of $40,000, which was catered for in the draft plan. Volunteers' cost of travel. It is recommended that Council recognises all costs of volunteer reimbursements, including travel to and from the volunteer's place of volunteering, and funds this from existing budgets. Recreation Centre hours. It is recommended that Council retain the existing hours of operation, estimated cost $20,000. Akaroa water supply. It is recommended that Council instruct staff to work with New Zealand Native Forest Restoration Trust, the Rod Donald Trust and the Akaroa Wairewa Community Board to develop a joint proposal for the purchase of a 190 hectare reserve in Akaroa, which covers the entire upper catchment of the town and water supply, for consideration as part of the next long-term plan. Pioneer Early Learning Centre. It is recommended that Council further investigate alternative service provision of this facility to be based on criteria set by Council and subject to formal consultation with staff as per Council's obligations under the Employment Relations Act. Refuse collection and disposal costs. It is recommended that Council conduct a localised trial into more efficient collection of refuse during 2014-15 with a view to implementation in the 2015 long-term plan. Stadium Trust. It is recommended that Council note the significant community feedback on the stadium rebuild and the central city issues. We turn to page 15. This is the summary of the financial changes based on the Mayor's recommendations. So Appendix B, summaries of rates impact. We work through the dollar changes and the rates impact and the rates increase to existing taxpayers. So for example, Council approved changes on flooding remissions. Change is $360,000. That fully flows through to a rates impact, which leads to a rates increase to existing ratepayers of 0.11%. So it's a tabular summation of the verbal that I've just read out with regard to Appendix A. Under the mayoral recommend changes, Templeton Pool, you can see 0.00%, doesn't round up to be even 0.01. Tram proposal, because it's capital works, the rates impact is 0.01%. Same with the head-to-head walkway, again it's capital being brought forward, 0% impact on rates. Recreation centre hours, 0.01. That leads us at that level to a 6.63% rates increase to existing ratepayers. When we add in the other changes, Central City Public Realm remissions, 0.06%, and the 13-14 forecast operating deficit of 1.27%, we end up with the recommended final 2014-15 annual plan rates impact of $353,378,223, or a rates increase to existing ratepayers of 7.96%. If I can take you now to Appendix C, this is the rates information. This is what is required to give effect to the 2014-15 plan. It's also now explicitly included within the recommendations, and any changes from the recommendations or additional changes will require these to be recalculated and rerun before we can formally approve the recommendations and strike the rates. You can see they cover the general rates by capital value, the targeted rates by capital value, and the rates set by uniform charge or unit charge, including the uniform annual general charge, the waste minimisation targeted rate, the active travel targeted rate, water file service connection, restricted water targeted rate, and the loan servicing costs for Governors Bay. The following page breaks down, based on the acceptance of the mayoral recommendations, how the rates payable move between 2013-14 actual and 2014 and 15 for a comparison at particular capital values across residential, business and rural splits. My final piece to cover is Appendix D, page 19, and these are minor changes and errors. These are generally changes arising from new information that was not available when the draft annual plan was being developed. So if I talk through them quickly. The first one is the Resilient Cities Network, and it's recommended that Council adopt the following levels of service and targets as amendments to the draft annual plan for the Resilient Cities Network service. And they are those as set out there, 5011, 5012 and 5013. Art gallery and museums. The following level of service targets are recommended to be removed from the annual plan on the basis that the art gallery facility will not be open during the 2014-15 year. So there are 4 items for removal. And the following level of service targets are recommended to be amended for the annual plan, also on the same basis. For the Akaroa Museum, it is recommended that the exhibitions target be amended to allow for projects that take place off-site, and amending the target no fewer than 3 exhibitions presented per annum to no fewer than 3 exhibitions or off-site projects presented per annum. With respect to building policy, the following level of service target is recommended to be changed to come in line with our agreement with insurers that we will advise building-related claims within 10 working days or less. Note that building-related claims may include claims under LGOIMA and the Local Government Act, but not the Resource Management Act. And that amendment follows. Customer service counters at civic offices. The following level of service targets are recommended to be changed to improve accessibility of our services. These changes have taken effect from Monday the 19th of May 2014. Customer services counter at civic offices being open at 8 a.m. rather than 8:30 a.m, closing time remaining the same, and regulatory service counters will also open at 8 a.m. rather than 8:30, with the closing time also remaining at 5 p.m. Noting there are no additional financial costs associated with this change, as they can be catered for through reallocation of staff hours across the day. Due to the new Hallsville Library and Service Centre not opening in the 2014-15 financial year, proposed customer services levels of service will also need to be adjusted. Events and festivals. Following the recent council decision, the level of service targets in relation to the discontinuation of the Ellerslie International Flower Show Icon event is to be changed, and those 2 changes are in the subsequent bullet points. Staff submissions on libraries, recreation and sports centre and early learning centre. Submissions have been received from staff potentially affected by the proposals in the draft annual plan for 2014-15. They outline a series of concerns at the implications of reducing hours, or in the case of the Pioneer Early Learning Centre, exploring the possibility of another agency providing that service. These staff submissions are in line with our commitment to thorough process, and it should be noted that unlike submissions from the community, they clearly involve employment issues. As such, Council must be aware of the matters raised before making any decisions, while at the same time protecting the privacy of the individuals involved and the details of their employment. For that reason, these submissions have not been made available to the public along with public submissions. Worth noting that the Mayor's recommendations do not suggest continuing with the proposed alteration to recreation and sports facilities hours of operation. However, it is recommended that investigation of alternative service provision continue for the Pioneer Early Learning Centre. Rating policy part of the financial impact statement. Recommendation to make 2 adjustments to the rating policy part of the financial impact statement, page 124 of the draft annual plan. Change the name of the rural, farming and forestry, rates differential to remote rural, farming and forestry, Change the name of the residential and other properties, rates differential to standard rate. The objective of this is to clarify the intention of the policy, which is to charge a standard rate to all properties not explicitly captured under the business or rural differentials. Justify the discounted rural differential on the grounds that such properties are generally remote and therefore assumed to consume fewer council services, and improve ratepayer understanding, especially among lifestyle and urban farmers who feel entitled to the discounted rate on the grounds that their land is rural in nature, and so reduce time and pressure for call centre and other affected staff. These changes have been discussed with Jonathan Salter of Simpson Grierson, who has advised that the changes are semantic rather than substantive in nature, and so may be appropriately adjusted through the CEO process without requiring additional consultation. The last 2, clean fill fees and charges. Fees relating to the clean fill bylaw omitted an error from annual plan fees and charges schedule. This clean fill licensing bylaw was passed in 2008, and under the interpretation section for fees, it does indicate that the licence application fee and licence monitoring fee means that the fee set up in Schedule C may be amended by the Council from time to time by resolution. Schedule C provides the fees, giving a licence application fee at the time of passing of the bylaw of $250 plus GST, and the licence monitoring fee at the time of passing the bylaw of $3,470 plus GST. And web page public notice proposal new fee. This proposal arose following the publication of the Sale and Supply of Alcohol Regulations 2013, which were published in the New Zealand Gazette on the 21st of November 2013. As a result of the proposal, a new website is needed, and part of the proposal is the creation for a new fee which would cover the administration of this process. The proposed fee is $85 inclusive of GST. It is requested that this proposal be considered for approval and inclusion in the council fees and charges schedule. So that covers fairly much the background, the context, a summary of the financial changes from the Mayor's recommendations, the minor errors and changes that are being requested, and on that basis I'll pass it back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. So I intend to open it up to questions, and I thought that I'd just begin with a question around the desire to kind of ring fence the rate. So when the rate increase over and above the 6.5, you said at the end of your report that the Canterbury Earthquake Rating Order 2012 enables the council to decide for each financial year to reassess rates during the rating year rather than only at the start of the year. The reason is to allow rates in Christchurch to reflect a change in capital value as a result of building demolition and subdivision since the Canterbury earthquakes. Would we be able to use that to remove that additional rate if we were to find an alternative source of funding for the damage caused by the floods?
You mean use rates that we collect from those?
No, we've got a deficit caused in part, so 1.27% increase is recommended on the basis that it couldn't have been predicted at the time. It was in relation to the flooding that occurred in March. If we were to find an alternative source of funding for that, would we be able to remove the rate during the course of the year?
Yes.
Excellent. Good. Paul?
So if we manage to make our CCHL perform better than returning a less than a 3% dividend for us, we could actually effectively use that increase to reduce our rates?
The issue with the rating order is that it gives the council the opportunity to change rates in respect of properties where the building has been demolished, where there's been part building, where there's been subdivision as a result of earthquake repairs and damage. And it means that you're able to levy those rates or adjust those rates in accordance with what is happening on the ground. So yes, you can increase your rate if you've got a bare section that has a development or a building repair on it. You can alter your rate to reflect that improvement through the year rather than waiting until the end of the year. So
does that change the answer to my question then?
Well, why I said yes.
It's a different question.
Well,
we have the power to end a special charge, even if we are able to find an alternative source of funding for it.
The purpose of the order is to give us the option of being able to.
My question isn't really around the order. I sort of leapt on the order because it was there as a mechanism. Yep. So at the moment, the recommendation is that we put 1.27 as a ring-fence special charge in addition to the 6.5 and the other modest increase for those other two things, the remission. The question is that if we could find an alternative source of funding for that, not better performance from CCTOs, but say we were funded specifically for the flooding damage that was caused through, say, a government source of funding, civil defence funding, if we were able to successfully attract that, could we take the charge off during the course of the year?
Particular properties rather.
Yes, it's particular properties to which that rate applies, and we have the option of either Altering the rate during the
pretend
year.
I didn't mention the rating order,
Well,
because it's a separate question. The rating order, you're telling me, is just around the capital value as a result of building demolition and subdivision. So what you're telling me is that I can't use the rating order for the purpose that I'm asking. So I'm leaving that question behind and asking a new question, which is, if we find an alternative source of funding for the incurred emergency response and remedial costs to help prevent further flooding in various parts of the city, so we've got an offset of these costs of rates increase of 0.86% and rates remission for properties affected where people have to move out. Are we able to take that special charge off if we find an alternative source of funding for it during the course of the year?
Yes, I'd like to just talk with Peter and the others about that before I commit myself to an answer.
Okay.
Because I think there might be, I want to make sure there are no fish hooks in responding to that question.
Okay. Yanni?
My understanding is that it would be incredibly difficult for a council to change the basis for ratings in the middle of a rating period. So, I think really the question is, can we change the rates level during the course of the year? And my initial reaction would be no, because we have a whole bunch of people that pay in different instalments. So one of the things that we're doing today or tomorrow is setting out the schedule by which people pay. So some people will be charged in the first quarter, some will be charged in the second, the third and the fourth.
Yeah,
and so if you removed it halfway through the year, it would seem pretty unfair to me on the people that have paid at the start and the ones yet to pay.
The whole purpose of setting the rates now is for the year, and the only issue is around that order.
This is the special charge though, and it's not changing the baseline rate. That's the point that I'm making, is that if at a particular point in time it would actually generate a return to anyone who had paid it, if we could find an alternative source of funding. That's all. It's a shame that, anyway, Glenn.
Glenn, that's all right. Very intrigued with this. Just with the order in council, is it your understanding that could actually be applied en masse? So my take on it is that provision exists on a case-by-case basis. So normally we would not be able to do this until we've reached the end and beginning of a new rating year. But my understanding is we can do this, as you've said, at the point of demolition, etc. So is it your understanding we could apply that order en masse across the whole ratepayer base?
No.
You can't? Okay.
Ali?
Just if I could refer you to page 20 at the bottom, the rating policy part of the financial impact statement, talking about the change of ratings on some properties, rural, etc. My understanding is that there are some properties currently classified as rural, in our ward actually, that will need to be looked at as far as reclassifying as residential. Now I see your reference to the other way round, but I don't actually see any reference to the properties that are going to potentially be reclassified in the example I've just given. Could you respond to that, please?
Yes, this isn't in any sense around classification changes or checking people's eligibility for particular classifications. This is simply clarifying the wording around those classifications. So it's not changing any of the rules, it's just changing the explanation of the title to make it clearer.